The naval Battle of Swally took place on 29–30 November 1612 off the coast of Swally, a village near the city of Surat, Gujarat, India, and was a victory for 4 English East India Company galleons over 4 Portuguese NAUs and 26 barks. Importance. This relatively small naval battle is historically important as it marked the beginning of the end of Portugal's commercial monopoly over India, and the beginning of the ascent of the English East India Company's presence in India. This battle also convinced the English East India Company to establish a small navy to safeguard their commercial interests from other European powers and also from pirates. This small beginning is regarded as the root of the modern Indian Navy. The background to this battle also points to the main reason for the Dutch Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie being organized in 1602. Background. This battle was the result of the Portuguese monopoly over trade with India in the late 15th and 16th centuries. 2 English ventures, the Company of Merchant Adventurers which became the Muscovy Company in 1555, and the English East India Company also known as John Company, were desperately attempting to find routes to the East Indies and the spice trade. The following 3 individuals played a key part in the events leading up to this battle. Ralph Fitch. The Portuguese guarded their newfound routes to Asia very well. During July 1583, an English merchant, Ralph Fitch, was arrested for spying at Ormuz. He was on a voyage from Syria to the Indian Ocean in his ship, Tiger, via what is now Iraq using the Euphrates River. Ralph was presented before the Portuguese viceroy in Goa where he was placed under arrest. He was released on the surety provided by Jesuit priests, but escaped from Goa and wandered around India for the several years. He returned to England in 1591, and became a valuable consultant for the company. Jan Huygens van Linschoten. Jan Huygens van Linschoten was a Dutch Protestant traveller and historian who also served as the Portuguese viceroy's secretary in Goa between 1583 and 1588. He returned to Holland in 1592. He published a book, Itinerario, in 1596 which graphically displayed for the first time in Europe detailed maps of voyages to the East Indies, particularly India. During his stay in Goa, abusing the trust put in him by the viceroy, Jan Huygens meticulously copied the top-secret charts page by page. Even more crucially, Jan Huygens provided nautical data like currents, deeps, islands and sandbanks, which was absolutely vital for safe navigation, along with coastal depictions to guide the way. His publications were also responsible for the establishment of the Dutch East India Company in 1602 to unify Dutch efforts at trade with Asia. Captain William Hawkins. First envoy. Captain William Hawkins led the first voyage of the English East India Company to India and sailed into the Gujarat port of Surat on 24 August 1608. He had with him 25,000 pieces of gold and a personal letter to the Mughal Emperor Jahangir from King James I seeking trade concessions. He persisted for over 2 years. However, Portuguese pirates stole his gold, and tried several times to murder him while on shore. He returned to England empty-handed. The next envoy, Paul Canning, lasted only a few months. 10th voyage. The initial voyages of the English East India Company were not necessarily to India. Each voyage was almost a venture in itself, separately funded by issuance of subscription stock. An 8th voyage was led in 1611 by Captain John Saris to Japan. The 9th voyage was to India and Sumatra. The 10th voyage on behalf of the English East India Company was led by Captain Thomas Best. It set out from Gravesend on 1 February 1612, passing via the present-day Trinidad, then Daman on 3 September 1612, eventually reaching Surat on 5 September 1612. Surat was the principal port for the Moguls, and was then situated at the mouth of the river Tapta. Battle. Coincidentally, on 13 September 1612 a squadron of 16 Portuguese barks sailed into Surat. On the 22nd of September 1612, Captain Best decided to send an emissary to the emperor asking for permission to trade and settle a factory at Surat. If refused, he planned to quit the country. This may have been partly because King James I had extended the company's charter in 1609 on the basis that it would be cancelled if no profitable ventures were concluded within 3 years. On the 30th of September 1612, Captain Best got news that 2 of his men, Mr. Canning and William Chambers, were arrested while on shore. Fearing the worst, Captain Best detained a ship belonging to the governor of Gujarat and offered to release it in exchange for his men. On the 10th of October, Captain Best and his ships sailed to Swally, a small town about 12 miles north of Surat. This may have been because the governor was battling a Rajput rebellion at a fort situated in the town. Between 17 to 21 October, amidst negotiations, he managed to obtain a treaty with the governor allowing trading privileges, subject to ratification by the emperor. On the 27th of November, Captain Best was advised by his men on shore that a squadron of 4 Portuguese ships was sailing up to attack him. The Portuguese ships arrived on the 28th, and anchored outside the roadstead, placing the English vessels between themselves and the town. A skirmish took place between the 2 navies on the 29th without much damage to either side. At daylight on the 30th of November, Captain Best in Red Dragon sailed through the 4 larger Portuguese ships, running 3 of them aground, and was joined by Hochanda on the other side. The Portuguese managed to get the 3 galleons refloated. At 9 p.m. that night, in an attempt to set the English ships alight, a bark was sent towards them as a fire ship, but the English watch was alert, and the bark was sunk by cannon fire with the loss of 8 lives. A standoff remained until the 5th of December, when Captain Best sailed for the port of Diu. 10th voyage continues. On the 6th of January 1613, Captain Best received a letter from the emperor ratifying the treaty, which was presented by the governor. Captain Best then ordered one of his men, Anthony Starkey, on the 16th of January to leave for England, via land, carrying letters of their success. Mr. Starkey was later poisoned by 2 Jesuit friars. Captain Best then continued on to Ceylon on the 18th of January, and then onwards to Sumatra, before returning to England around April 1614 without returning to India. Impact on Moguls. This event sufficiently impressed the Sardar of Gujarat, who reported it to the emperor. Thereafter the emperor was more favourable towards the English than the Portuguese. Another factor that may have influenced him was that the Portuguese were very anti-Islam, and often harassed Mecca-bound pilgrim ships along the west coast of India. Ships involved: English East India Company Red Dragon, Hochanda, James, Solomon. Portugal 4 galleons, 26 sword barks, Swally. The exact present-day location of the port of Swally is unknown. The Times of India, in an article dated 8 April 2003, reported that the Department of Archaeology of the University of Cambridge along with the Gujarat Ecological Society are planning a project to identify the port. It is estimated that the port is close to the modern-day village of Swally, 15 to 20 kilometers away from Surat. The port was constructed by the English as they found it protected both from sudden squalls and military attacks. Besides, the English found it convenient to use the place for their early trade with Surat, as Swally was navigable in low tides. There were several complications in using the ports at Surat, as the French and the Portuguese also operated from there. Mr. Arsene Gupta, the chief project coordinator of GES, advised that the port was also better than those located in the mouth of River Tapta.